Okay, so hi, this is Tanya Schultz with Social Chats. I'm actually on my Fun Friday chatting with my I don't know, my co-host who used to be my co-host, and hopefully he'll come to Twitter with me. Jason Pellish, founder of Massive Impression and the founder of Click Whisperer, the Click Whisperer. How are you?
Yeah, excellent. Hello, Tanya.
How's it going?
Very good. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you. This is my good friend Delphina. She has the same philosophy as you and I. She's dealing with a lot of different things too, but she's really cool. So I invited her, and I'm gonna wait for other people to pop in. So Jason, before we start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your companies? Again, this space is being recorded, so I will have it up by the end of the day.
Oh, okay.
For replay.
So my name is Jason Pellish, and I'm an online marketer. I do a lot of things, but that's pretty much what I do most of the time. Online marketing in one form or another. I've written a lot about SEO, and now AI is getting involved. And when you're talking about SEO, you're really talking about meeting the requirements of the Google search crawler, which is like a type of AI. So I've been thinking a lot about that and trying to solve problems around that lately, which has caused me to consider different things that I tend to write down in articles and stuff like that. So I have these two articles that you pinned here that I wrote recently, and both of them I put on my website that I published called The Click Whisperer, and that's a site that's now more than a decade old. I've got lots of articles that I've written there about online marketing, and I tend to segregate the stuff that I don't want to publish on Massive Impressions or any of my other types of blogs and stuff towards the Click Whisperer. So it's all my sort of stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else, right? So the thing that I wrote about first was about AI content creation, and the phenomenon that is happening now is that people are using artificial intelligence to create articles, to create content, and this content is used mainly for SEO purposes, for the majority of people that I believe are leveraging this type of technology. And I wrote this article that illustrated a potential pitfall of using AI to create content, which is basically that AI will magnify misinformation and copy things without regard for how accurate it is, because search engines and AI that go out and try to write things really have no way to affirm the truthfulness of something. They can score it via all sorts of other factors, but truthfulness is a real hard thing to score. So when AI goes out to rewrite content, to rephrase content for the purpose of creating unique content, which has an SEO benefit, as a SEO, as a resource, unique content has a value. AI will go out and, you feed in all sorts of source content, and it regurgitates the same content rephrased and possibly with inaccuracies introduced. So the problem with that is that, over time, if it's AI reading the work of other AI, the inaccuracies will add upon themselves and become more and more cumulative. Just like if we launch, some sort of rocket into space, and it creates some sort of space junk or debris as a result of us leaving it up in space and not having a plan for taking it back down. This is a problem of information junk that gets created by AI. But let's just put it this way. To be fair, since I wrote this, I have been, keeping an eye out for this issue and seeing if I can spot this practically occurring in the real world. And what I noticed is that, it probably happens more with people. The magnification of the copy and paste mentality of, creating content thoughtlessly just for the purpose of creating it to create unique content by volume. So that was the first thing that I wrote about. And I guess it's just a warning that it can occur. And for people who are going to use AI to create content for marketing purposes or for, purposes that would result in a whole bunch of pages being created, I urge you to be careful with it. And I urge you to, understand the pitfalls of it. And don't be somebody who's reckless with that type of technology, because it is really powerful. Now, that's not such a big deal. I mean, that's kind of, nursery school compared to the next thing that I wrote about, which also has to do with AI.
So, Jason, let's talk about your first article. I mean, like myself, I'm a content creator. I run campaign. Yeah. I don't run ads anymore. My whole life is now on Twitter Spaces, but it's a good thing. I'm here in the space, and let me say hi to my friends first. Say hi to Michael and Selena and Tomas and Samantha and Delphina. That's the one I was telling you about, and also Symbiotic. He's here too. So the thing is, everybody, this is Jason Pellish. We used to do a show together, focusing on the locals of South Florida and what's happening and stuff. So he was like my work husband, as we were going to call it. Tuesday we would talk, and we talked all the time. So we've been trying to get back in touch with each other since the lockdown and all this stuff. But he knows I'm obsessed with AI and what I love to do. And so and my friend Nina is here too. So the thing with AI, I always thought it was kind of cool to have my AI go out, find my content, and so that I don't have to worry about what content I'm going to post, because my AI knows what's happening, right? It's going to go out, find the content, write up the content, and publish the content for me. So you're telling me that I read your article, and if anybody wants to read it, I pinned it up in the Nest. AI content creation problems, creating misinformation through AI manipulation. So I know a lot of digital people who are content creator, and we all are on that gray area. Some people I do know, and I know you know them too. It's like the AI. We think that AI is trained by the person, but when you buy an AI or software, they say, "Oh, this is an AI." The software that they sell you for $2.99, and then add a little bit more. Your AI would do this for you. I think I might have one that I haven't tried it yet, because that's my concern. But so you can have an AI that is like having issues, right? Like it can make up content, but then it can lie to you, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it's not that it's necessarily lying to you, but it can produce information that's inaccurate, right? Like, it doesn't have an intent to lie, but it can definitely rephrase things in a way that makes the information that ends up getting published be something inaccurate, where, if you're trying to appear as though you're an authoritative voice, that can really mislead people, especially if other people copy it. So in that article, I give a little example in a video of how over several generations, AI content generation programs writing about something that might be kind of boring to human beings, or have not that much information about it. Over time, if the AI steals from each other's content work and only has each other's information to reference, they're going to inject their own inaccuracies, and they're going to copy the inaccuracies that existed before them. So, that's a very, over dramatized example. It actually may be less when people put it in place, and, more when people leverage it more. I mean, if you're writing one article and you're leveraging AI for the purpose of making it easier to read, I mean, wonderful. Use AI, definitely, and use these systems like CopyShark, Jarvis, they're conversion AI. And I call it AI because that's how people are labeled. AI content creation. It's a new phenomenon, and people are discussing it in different SEO groups and stuff like that.
I've never even heard of that. I actually invited my friend Adam, who does SEO for a living, to come in, so hopefully he'll show up. But I never even heard of the AI content creation. That's actually like a label, like a title.
Yeah. So the reason why you would do it is, let's say, for example, I publish an article and it has 300 words and it's about some concept and it's optimized for a specific key term. That article is going to gain some traction with Google. So by itself, it may, not be ranked very well, especially if there's a lot of competition. But if I create 4 or 5 websites, each with unique articles about a certain topic, and then link to the one website that I'm trying to promote, all those individual feeder sites, all those children's sites work to promote a parent site. And that's just in theory. I mean, in the real application, it's not so simple, but that's why people leverage it. So you can go out and hire people to write for you and tell them, here's the subject matter and here's the reference material. Please rewrite this for me. Or you can leverage AI. You can feed all that, those links into AI and see how AI does for you. Now, if you're not a subject matter expert in that area and you're just taking what the AI gives to you, how do you know whether what the AI spits out is actually true or not? It could sound right to you, right? But unless you really understand the nuances of what's being said in that particular industry and the terminology and all that, you might actually end up publishing something that's quite inaccurate. So that's the risk with that. And then, if somebody comes along and references your article and does the same with their AI a year down the road or 2 years down the road, I mean, in a decade or two, we've got a bunch of junk about important topics that, is misinformation. And, it might be that these things referencing each other may cause some other AI in the future to make bad decisions. Because you got to realize that all this information is being published with the intention of tricking an AI, which is Google's AI, into thinking that it's authoritative and, worthy, valuable content that someday some people may, read and appreciate. That's Google's job, to send its visitors to content that's valuable to them. So if you can trick the search crawler into thinking that you're publishing content that's a lot more valuable and authoritative than it actually is, then, you've succeeded in your endeavor in using AI content creation, and you're going to continue to do it because, you find it to be effective and profitable. And it is powerful. It is profitable. I mean, it is the way to get, aside from hiring people to write for you, it is the way to get a lot of unique content published. So that's AI content creation. That's the first problem. So we're up at 15 minutes. So let's switch gears and go to the second concept.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, if you don't know.
Yeah, okay.
It's a little bit more abstract, but it's a little bit more interesting. And it also has to do with it. And, this concept is around neural interfaces. And
should we tweet out to Elon Musk? Let me tweet this out to Elon to make sure he knows. Maybe he'll pop in. Elon Musk, that's his thing, isn't it? The Neuralink.
Yeah, right. Elon, right? Who knows, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly how his neural interface works, right? Or what he envisions, or what the designers of it envision for it to do. But we can imagine how they might work, right? How a neural interface might be useful to us and how we would use it in our heads, right? So let's do a little thought exercise right now. Dive right into this concept and imagine, like when Iron Man puts on his helmet and he's got that voice talking to him, which is his, companion AI, his helper AI or whatever, he can hear that voice, and that voice is disconnected from him. It's in his helmet, and it sounds like it's in his head, right? But it's not. It's somewhere else, and he can take that helmet off and take it away. So there, if we had a neural interface and it was connected to us, we might also be able to hear, without some sort of speaker or ears, some kind of voice in our head that's talking to us and, feeds us information verbally that we process verbally. And it has a dialogue with us, just like as if, we had an Iron Man helmet on. The only difference is it's coming from inside our head rather than outside, right? But that's only one way that we can get information to our heads, right, or in our heads. And there may be ways that we find with neural interfaces after using them for a while that it's more useful to get information to people subverbal, so they have the information available to them before it even becomes verbalized in their mind, without any voice tone. And if the AI is sufficiently sophisticated, it can also predict what the person might need based on the inputs of the person's sensory inputs, use them as the sensory device, and know, what the person's going to need and think of and ask for and dialogue with, and have all that information pre-served up for the person's advantage when it comes time to access it or it comes time to make use of it, right? So these AI are going to be, subverbal. Well, over time, I believe the AI is going to be most useful when it's subverbal. And neural interfaces are going to be most useful when they're connected to this sufficiently sophisticated AI that can predict what we're going to need, predict how we're going to think, and augment that at the time when we're doing the thinking, right? So that sounds great. I mean, wow, I would have a super mind, and I would be able to, solve problems instantly rather than having to labor over them, worry about them. It'd be so great to navigate through the world with that kind of confidence, right? It would feel great. It would feel empowering. So, you'd have a lot of incentive to use it, and people would have a lot of incentive to improve it because, obviously, if you're walking around like a supercomputer who can solve problems, you're very valuable. And, you're going to be competing with other people who are also going to have juiced up cortexes and, they're also connected to AI that is of different designs that compete with each other for performance that people, customize or whatever. But the problem comes in when you have a sufficiently sophisticated AI connected to your brain like that, you give up a certain amount of your identity and autonomy because that thing is really going to be doing the thinking for you. So that's why I call this concept the Mobius mirror, because if you know what like a Mobius strip is, it's a shape that looks three-dimensional, but it really can just be mapped out with two-dimensional coordinates. It's a single surface that looks like two surfaces when you look at it up close. But it isn't. It's the same surface. I mean, if it was floating in space, you just walk on it forever and you cover every part of its surface, And the problem with having an AI inside your mind so closely integrated with your mind, if it was sufficiently sophisticated to be useful and competitive against other AI or other people who are augmented in this way, is that you couldn't separate yourself from it. You wouldn't be able to know what is your own thoughts organically and your thoughts that are being added to the organic you from, of course, the outside. I mean, you would not, be carrying around your AI with you. You'd be connected to some external AI. So, okay, you're incredibly smart. You're incredibly useful. You're, able to grab all this information that's only as valuable as its accuracy, right? And, should you still vote? I mean, are you still a human being to the point where you can't be influenced? You can believe you're not being influenced, but you very well may be, So that's the quandary, that's the the Turing test that I'm saying nobody should really put themselves in the position to take. Am I talking to myself, or am I talking to a machine that I can't distinguish from myself? So that's the Mobius mirror type concept.
So you're saying that AI is happening now. The stuff that we're looking for on Google is there right now. Like it's written by AI, the content, the information. So we don't even really know, because I just did a whole show on fake news, right? So if you and I talk about this all the time. So fake news is a matter of opinion sometime, or how the research is done. But if a lot of these, much smarter digital marketer are out there using this new AI to create content based on what people want to see instead of seeing real news. So when I research for to do a story, I should double and triple check but is there like a way we can know that this is written by an AI or no?
No.
Oh, that's
no. I mean, it would be very responsible for people to mark up content that was passed through an AI or written with the assistance of AI. Even if it was published with a human author's name on it, because a human wants to take responsibility for it. The human may or may not be leaning a little or very heavily on AI to do the research, do the writing, right? And you can see in the future that it's going to be more than less, right? And in that case, is that human going to disclaim how much they've done it? Or is that going to be kind of like a dirty little secret people keep to themselves? From an SEO level, it certainly behooves you to conceal the fact that it's written by AI. And, you want to make it look like it's the esteemed Professor Quackenbush who wrote this. And, of course, it should be indexed by Google or given, authority and not be taken as misinformation or a non-authoritative source, right? So people are definitely going to, if there was a markup, people are going to use it in the wrong way and abuse it. I think the people who are going to gain the most from, using it. I mean, little old me, I'd probably go and use it, innocently think I'm helping the world, and stepping on my own feet. But, I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution really, and I said this in the article, is, lies with Google with the, AI content creation.
So
they really need to figure out ways to detect it and to, at the end of the day, penalize it, and especially maybe come up with some sort of encyclopedia or a dictionary as to what we all agree reality is that isn't.
So really, we don't even know what the reality we know right now could be real or be AI generated.
Oh well, yeah, that's a whole other.
That's a whole nother Twitter Spaces to talk about, because like it's interesting on how I think a couple of years ago when you and I were talking about AI and content and all this stuff, I thought the fact that now they're using it, but no one then I read an article that Forbes is talking about how AI is changing everything. It will change everything, but when it comes to our own information, our own content that's written, that we people's like, just Google it. Google doesn't lie.
Right. Right. Well, it's messed up what AI can do, right? Like people think, oh, well, I would never let myself get interfaced with AI and have AI make decisions for me. But really, when you go to Google, you're doing that. When you go to Google and you're accepting the results that Google gives to you, and you're just looking as far as the homepage, and you're not using other search engines to compare results or, really digging deep. You're just skimming the surface and taking the first thing Google tells you to accept, looking at the rich results and listening to the questions and answers and accepting the answer that Google tells you is, gospel. Then it's really AI doing things. It's AI, that's providing you with your access to information. Somebody was saying, I think it was on Twitter, somebody saying like, oh, you go and you get a PhD and you do all this research, and then random guy on the internet says, BS, that should make somebody crumble. Who cares really? But the thing is, even experts, to think that the world's most esteemed certified experts don't themselves go to Google and ask Google questions every day, all day, is folly, because of course they do. I mean, they've got really important things they got to research. Google's the most powerful tool to do it. So sorry, but we're all going to use it. We're all going to learn ourselves.
But do you know where I'm going with this? It's like,
what?
So we're going to use Google, but if Google does not police the content to make sure, and if it's an AI writing this content, publishing it as fast as they can, and indexing it, and Google's indexing it, saying, "Oh yeah, this is real good content," but no one's policing it. Like, how do we know that information that it's putting out is true?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Even Google doesn't know that, because their PageRank score only goes by how many sites are pointing each other. It really has nothing to do with how true something is, or whether it comes to a trusted voice or anything like that. Once you start implying those things in there, you got human moderation that's required. And some of those rich results and stuff like that, those are the effort of somebody who's acting in the role of a librarian, which is cool. That's the way Yahoo used to work. I mean, it does have a lot of value. You combine that with the strictly algorithmic PageRank. But the thing is that, AI is already encouraging people to do things that are pretty degenerate, right? Like, you can look at the whole trend of teens being influenced by other teens on Instagram, and it causes depression because they don't live up to some sort of expectation that's, too unrealistic and too high that nobody can. And everybody projects a, unrealistic expectation to each other. Meanwhile, while people are enjoying, the type of things that they should be taking pictures of, they forget about putting it on Instagram.
Well, I mean, just like they just said that they told Facebook that Instagram is hazardous to young kids, and it's like Instagram's going to get shut down.
All the kids are out there enjoying these things like fishing or being at the beach and not taking pictures of themselves. They get back home, they regretted that they didn't, because everybody else has got their pose and pictures. So anyway, that's pretty bad, right? And it's like a vicious circle that the algorithms sort of created, right? I mean, they exacerbate that type of already awkward social dynamic between kids. And then something really specific that AI is responsible for is that stupid crate challenge on TikTok, right? Where everybody tries to climb the milk crates and falls down and hurts themselves. I mean, it's really funny, but people could be genuinely hurting themselves, kind of like a jackass prank, and it be encouraged, because when they do it, it gets some more views and stuff like that. So there's no regard for whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's
you mean like the Tide Pod? Let's eat some Tide Pod.
Like Tide Pods, exactly, the whole Tide Pod thing. And then the most recent thing that I learned about today, this is hot off the internet, is Devious Licks. Have you heard about that?
No, tell us more. I brought up to that before you start. I brought up my good friend Ariel, and I brought up
Katrina. Bring more people.
Yeah, whoever wants to join us into the conversation, you're welcome to. I send out invites, and if not, just request a mic. Jason, go ahead, tell us.
Oh, so Devious Licks is this phenomenon that kids are destroying things inside their school bathrooms and removing toilets or removing doors or soap containers and all this stuff, and recording it and putting it on TikTok or YouTube and that kind of stuff. And that's like the hashtag that goes along with it. And, like my son
came home and said, "Oh, look at this horrible thing that these, faculty are screaming about and all that stuff." So yeah, I mean, you could get kids to really pretty much behave themselves out of bathrooms in public schools with a stupid trend like that. Like get kids to close their own bathrooms and get the bathrooms closed on them so they can't use their bathroom. I mean, that's pretty horrible and pretty chaotic, but a trend like that makes it seem like it's something cool to do and that you're going to get more views and likes and whatever follows if you do it. That's really the whole. And it's not AI. I mean, it's definitely. It's not like there's some intelligence involved. It's just like a degenerate algorithm. I don't know how else you would call it. It's just a side effect of what people are interested in most.
That's kind of strange. I don't know. Ariel, did you have any questions? You want to join in?
Yeah. Just thinking on top of my head, I'm hoping that like AI does something better for people who are looking for like job opportunities and stuff like that, instead of all of this like, having to go to a university or having to spend like 6 months, like blah, blah, blah. Like we can just learn something in AI and do that. And then it'll open up like some kind of career door, career path. I don't know.
Well, do you know you're on MBTI? Have you ever heard of that? Your Myers-Briggs type? Have you ever?
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
So if you could use that and a bunch of other criteria to find you, the perfect career placement, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? I mean, have like an AI recruiter and somebody tell you, this is where you'd fit in best, and this is the team who would accept you the most, and if it worked out great, you'd have friends for life and achieve things that you were proud of. And all. But what if it doesn't work out great? What if the AI is like, okay, man, so the world needs ditch diggers. I hope you realize, like that line from Caddyshack. I mean, it's great if it's working out for you, but, somebody's going to have to do the tough work. And if you're not into it, and the AI is trying to convince you somehow, has some other agenda, it could be pretty nightmarish. But I would love to, AI is involved already in a lot of that with you that's customized. Google for Jobs was really where I cut my teeth on playing around with structured data, which is a big markup thing in SEO. If you have the criteria of a job listing published with structured data, then it'll get shown on that Google for Jobs rich results. But if you don't, it won't get shown there. So
what about this? Like, I'm trying to become like a very meaningful influencer, and Tanya's trying to help me with that. Like, the AI could attract people into my subjects that I talk about, or into my rooms, or into a place where I'm selling, tickets for like a comedy thing that I have on my mind, or a political thing that I have on my mind. Mm-hmm. I just because everybody's scared of technology for taking away opportunities. What about the potential to like create better lives for ourselves, better opportunities?
Well, I worry whether or not I'm shooting myself in the foot by warning people about AI, because AI is, what's going to be directing people to tune in or not, right? Like, I don't want to make our future overlords mad at me here, so that they can look back at the past and say, "Oh, he really wasn't too kind to us."
Your future overlord.
Yeah, the AI, right? So, I don't know. I would just recommend you talk kindly about AI. I wouldn't go out and marry one just yet, but when that time comes, I wouldn't be a bigot and say you wouldn't consider it.
Oh my god.
What can I
But
say?
I mean,
Yeah.
isn't our Siri and our Alexa? I mean, I wish Alberto is up right now, but he was up for a long day yesterday. But Alberto, we have a friend that talks to AI all the time. But couldn't we? Don't we have kind of like indirectly an AI? But it's, like my AI is kind of lazy on my phone. She doesn't really do much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we think about like AI with something that has human intentions that would communicate with us and all that stuff. But it's kind of like just more sophisticated and does specific things for us then, right? Like it's not this companion that follows us around and it tells me, hey Jason, you told so and so that you got to get back to him, and there's that thing you wanted to donate to, don't forget about that. And like I don't have anything like that. I mean, it would be great if I did, and oh, hey, Jason, you got to write an article about this or that. I pre-wrote it for you. All you have to do is read it, edit it. I hope I did a good job. Like I don't have that. It would be cool. I would like that.
I would like one too, but I want an AI. Hey, Brent, do you want to add to the conversation?
I just thought of a night as I was listening to this conversation. I thought about an idea or something that I'd like to know about. How can AI be used for disabled people?
I have a good answer to that, but you got to kind of like draw a line. Like there's the biological person, which may have shortcomings, may have limitations, may have some ability to perform some tasks at 20% the capacity of the person who could do it the best, or whatever, or AI who can do it the best. Right? So everybody's can ultimately measure themselves according to a certain scale, and decide you're disabled. Like take IQ, right? Well, what if an AI could be added to your brain, and you have some disability, right? Let's say you have ongoing dementia, and it's growing and growing by the day. But as you start to fade biologically, the AI steps in more and more, right? To the point where if somebody measured your biological capacity to think or biological capacity to process, it would be very low, and it would almost be atrophy. But you'd find that the majority of the behaviors and stuff like that that are coming from this person are no longer from the person organically, but are all determined mechanistically by the electronic side of themselves. Is that the person still? I don't know. I would feel very uncomfortable losing that part of myself. Now, my family might not feel that way. And if I have my wife who is a companion who's looking forward to me being there with her as she grows older and helping her as she grows older, with the challenges of aging, she's got to make a comfortable decision. Does she continue with this thing that's mostly a machine but looks and talks and feels like me, or does she accept that I'm gone and, this is a replacement? Maybe it should be shut off. I don't know. I think that's really where we're going to have a tough time ethically is not with how much AI threatens us, but how much AI can really solve our problems. And when it does that, how much are we still the same thing as we were before? It's a personal choice. If you could say, for example, wear some helmet that made you
twice as productive, or earn twice as much money, and it helped your family, and it really made their lives twice as good, because if you were struggling making money or something like that, and it really changed who you are. Would you wear it? I mean, it would be almost selfish if you didn't, right? These are the things that we're going to have to deal with as the potential to augment ourselves becomes not just irresistible, but something that we're going to need in order to compete. That's something that Elon Musk always talks about. It's not, not like a choice that we'll have, but it's a requirement that's going to be forced upon us by the world around us. So in the future,
what about the glasses that's coming out now? Oh, you know what, Siraj, you have your hands up, hand raised? Did you want to ask a question? Oh.
Yeah. Hi, Tanya. Hi, Jason.
Hi, how are you?
Ariel, everyone else. Nice to meet you guys. So, Jason, I've been writing stuff about AI, but only at a business and industrial level of understanding on Medium and LinkedIn and a bunch of other outlets.
Yeah, cool.
But on the technical front, I always fail to understand that why is the AI community going after the jobs that are for workers who are getting paid anywhere between $15 to $30 an hour, right? For example, insurance claims adjuster. Yes, you use AI, to computer based imaging or whatever they call it, image recognition to find out who was at fault and all of that, automate, and so their jobs are gone. And in front of that, you have folks like the United Airlines ex-CEO. He came up with a lottery system to compensate all the ground staff. And it was so ridiculously, received that he was, they had to take it back. I mean, even his spreadsheet model could have done a more fair way of compensating those ground staff. But, so why isn't there more tooling, more AI at the executive level, but so much at the lower paid employee level?
That's a good question, right? Like, maybe you could put AI at the executive level and you find that the decisions being made are much better than what America's executive workforce.
I mean, I can bet you even an Excel spreadsheet model would have done a better job than the CEO in terms of compensating those ground workers. We didn't even need AI. So imagine what AI can do is what I'm saying.
Well, it's not just AI. I mean, I think the definition of AI is real loose. I used to do laboratory software. I used to build laboratory software. And I would literally show up in an implementation, and there would be rooms full of people whose responsibility it was to compile reports. And by the end of the implementation, we'd have empty rooms. And, there was no AI involved. This is just, a better software system that kills jobs, and it's a cheaper way to get the same work done. And how does that make you feel? After a couple of times, you realize when you're walking through these laboratories and stuff like that, why the people look afraid.
Right.
They've been through this before or whatever. So, there's a lot of power in automation, a lot of power, that isn't exclusively AI. But, when I think of AI, I think of something that is capable of learning itself, right? And something that is capable of doing discernment and having a capacity to really replace human beings and think about things in a way that people can't, right? Like this creating content, creating 300 pages of content is all you need. It would take people a long time to do that. But then you have to have a certain, sophisticated degree of grammar. Crawling all of that and trying to figure out what yes, do it. But AI helps. Yes.
and that's where she's surveilling people. I mean, that's where everybody's really scared about this. AI is going to be able to tell the darkest people's secrets before they even become reality, right?
I know.
Like that.
I mean, Robert Kraft would have caught. He would get caught, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right. Where is he going? He's heading towards that Oriental massage place. Let's cut off his credit card before he makes a mistake. Yeah, that's literally, you could have an AI assistant who steers you, don't do it, Robert. Robert, I know where you're going. You shut that thing off when you didn't want it around, when you needed it the most. Let's say that, right? Yeah, that happened right down near us here. So I followed that whole case very closely. And whether or not that was a human trafficking case, that's another article that I wrote about the definition of human trafficking. And that none of the local politicians want to discuss with me once I wrote it because it was such a hot potato, especially the local politicians that used human trafficking as their, shield that they're going to virtue signal with. They dropped that like a hot potato. What's that? What's all the Jeffrey Epstein and Robert Kraft stuff started coming out in this area? Everybody, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about COVID. So yeah, that's a local politics issue for us down here. It's got a lot of dimensions to it. Did I answer that one question good about disabled the use of AI and neural interfaces for disabled people? Because I think that's really I think about that a lot.
Well, so go ahead.
I mean, the way I look at it is, if any of the lower level jobs were to be eliminated with AI, for example, the food delivery bots.
Yeah, right.
Because now you don't want folks to make like a living from delivering pizza, right? So,
right.
So what I'm saying is, if the intention is that to uplift that community into higher paying wages and let the machines and AI do the lower level jobs, then yes, I'm all for it. But is that what the outcome will be? I'm not so sure. Same thing with the disabled community folks as well. The same arguments.
Well, here's a real important question that you have to ask yourself. And this is the lens, our economic system that we favor kind of answers this question for us. But, AI and all these things that can replace us is making us ask a different question of ourselves, and that is, what value does a human being have other than the economic value that they bring to the table through their labor or through their contribution to other people? I mean, what means do we have to measure the value of a person? It's completely subjective what somebody else's value is. And when you start measuring the value of other people according to some kind of scale, it's scary, because where do you set zero? And if you do set, according to certain measurements, some people might actually have a negative economic value, right? Now, that's a horrible way to look at people. It's a very inhumane way. Yet, we really don't possess any other means to value people other than economics. I think, before we try to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, or fill me in.
Listen, Yang actually discussed what you're talking about intrinsic value and economic value. So I just wanted to put that little thing in there. Thank you.
Yeah, right? Or a person, if they exist, has a value as a vote, right? Always has as long as you can get that person to flick that switch or check the box, yeah, no matter how debilitated they are, you get that vote out of a person. And people as a whole will have values to politicians because that, right? If there's fair and equal elections and all that. So, I mean, people will have all different values according to all different dimensions that judge them by, right? And you can judge people objectively, I think. But when I'm going into a laboratory and I know I'm the axe man for 20 heads there, I mean, do I have time to value them? Do I have some sort of metric that I can apply towards my decision in this, that, or is it just about me doing my job, being myself, being the best at what I do, and this is progress, and I have to accept the way it is? That's some tough stuff, man. And I don't have the answers. I'm hoping some, Andrew Yang can answer it in a way that's satisfying to me overall. I know what you're saying, yeah, and I know the whole UBI thing. In a way, I believe in it, but look at what we've just dealt with in the last couple months with, labor shortages. I would want to go to a job where there's really two classes of people. The people who are being served and don't have to wear masks, and the people who are serving them and have to wear masks. I mean, it's a mental thing that is a really big cost that's being put upon people, and people think, oh well, people, it's no big deal, they can just deal with it. Well, if they could, then everybody be back to work. But the future has all sorts of crazy uncertainties for us like that, and we're going to see all these black swans not be, things that with the multitude of people and multitude of abilities and powers that people have that are magnified digitally, we're going to see black swans every day, a different black swan every day, where that's going to become the norm, something that we didn't expect yesterday. And AI is just going to make it so much more weird and introduce so many different dimensions and levels, this and that. I mean, what happens when you take somebody and you augment them and you invest $2 million in them, and that person now becomes not just a subject matter expert, but worth 5 subject matter experts, in terms of what they can produce and what they can achieve. Is that person worth 5 times as much as an average person? Is a CEO that gets paid that incredible amount of money really genuinely worth that much more than a homeless person who gets paid nothing and just, has to take assistance from the state? I don't know, man. I mean, I've known both kind of people, and I don't feel comfortable valuing people just with money like that. That being said, I don't think there's any more greater, social system or economic system that encourages excellence and rewards merit like capitalism can. I've got really heavy philosophy, Now we're going into economics, but it's all connected when you're talking about AI, because AI, like you say, just changes the whole job market. If you could get robots all running at McDonald's and you don't have to hire a single person, and it produces better quality food, well, what's the argument for keeping people in there? If they're a higher liability and the robots are a lower risk, you got to be crazy to stock the place with people. You have to be a real, genuine humanitarian who's valuing something about human beings that's over and above, separate from the labor that they bring, to the workforce. Right? I mean, am I the only one who believes this? Humanity first. Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, we exist as a species, and there's a certain sort of cooperation that's beneficial to us all if we can maintain it. If we let it go, by having these things that can replace us so easy, we step in between
We do have an election coming up too. It's kind of scary. Chirag, did you want to? You have your hands raised. Go ahead.
Yeah. One more thing. So, how? Jason, how effectively has AI been applied at misinformation, right? I mean, you see there are news outlets like InfoWars and Breitbart and so on, and they just put whatever they feel like out there, and there's a huge community that also follows them, and they believe all that news is real. Can AI play a role in like stopping that misinformation or validating something that's put out which is not real, not true, and stuff that's intended to mostly divide people?
Well, honestly, if you're naming two, here's where this whole Twitter space goes south. If you're naming two information sources and you're going to score them for veracity, right? You're going to take something that's mainstream like MSNBC, CNN, and put it up against a Breitbart or an InfoWars.
Even NPR, right? Something which is
right. NPR,
research-based.
Horrible. Yeah. NPR's horrible propaganda, slanted, funded by private individuals with a lot of agendas. I don't trust anything that comes out of NPR. So, there's no impartial source. Just like with science, when you look at science, a good book to read is The Mismeasure of Man by Stephen Jay Gould. That he goes at scientists to that, and every scientist has some sort of bias that they apply to whatever it is they're giving their expert opinion. And that book was about people measuring craniums, and people would stuff down the seeds or whatever they were measuring cranium side. They push it down in their own ethno group that they got the skull from, and there was all sorts of biases that people put on measuring their own ethno group skull size because they all wanted to prove that their ancestors were smarter than everybody else. And it was funny in the end when you look at all the data, just how biased everybody's was, when all they were measuring was really stuff that we prove now. They had an enormous bias. Science is like that, and me writing articles, I write articles about both politics and stuff like that. I try not to inject my bias into it, but I am going to. Now, the cool thing about AI is it may not have a bias. Whereas every writer, whether it's CNN or Breitbart or InfoWars, every one of them has some bias. There's nobody who's out there who's got no lens at all that they're looking. And, it's scary for me. I aggregate a lot of news sources through this RSS thing that I built that I can look at two different stories about the same thing from the two different extremist sides of media. And it's really, they're both telling the truth. They're both not misrepresenting the situation according to their own understanding of it. But in telling the story incompletely, they both affirmed each a completely different narrative. And you see this every day, every single day in the news, right? It's not the AI that humans are so biased. I mean, maybe AI would be good at sorting out all the human noise and trying to come up with a middle ground, or a full spectrum representation of all the information that's known about it, so that you aren't really listening to one source. It would be great if you had an AI that said to you, hey, this is what's going on today, and, there's riots in Paris, and, they're really rioting about fuel prices, although, InfoWars wants to tell you it's about COVID, and MSNBC wants to tell you it's about climate change, and, that type of thing. You know what I mean? So, what you get as far as information comes to you have to realize that the AI that knows who you are, whether it's Google or whatever, is pre-filtering that information according to you as an individual, or whatever buckets you've been put in that make the use of that tool more tuned to you using it more often, right? So these AI are going to be biased towards you, because if they feed you information that doesn't fit your narratives and what you want to believe, you're not going to click on it, and you're not going to find it to be a useful tool. So they do this with YouTube. people believe that the information that you're shown in YouTube is completely customized according to what you're subscribed to, this, that, but it's actually customized according to a bucket of other people that YouTube has put you in. And that's why you'll often see things that you didn't necessarily subscribe to, but are related to what you have already been interested in. That's because everybody else who YouTube has put you in that bucket with has been, clicking on these things. And you might not be subscribed to those things, but because you're in the bucket with those people, you're going to be, shown those things. That's what's going to be suggested to you. I'm in this bucket with all these alternative news sources, and they all whine constantly, oh, YouTube never shows my videos to anybody anymore. Well, if YouTube wasn't showing them to me, I would be watching them, So, it's just that there's not that many people in this bucket, dude.
So funny. So we have I have Adam who does SEO for a living. That's who I was trying to get a hold of. So he's here. Hey Adam, how are you?
What's up, Adam?
Hello, how y'all doing today? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Hey, Adam. Hey, Adam.
Perhaps Saturday.
Am I the only one who thinks Adam Sneaky looks like his eyes are closed? He's taking a nap.
In my picture? You're the second person that told me that. I've had that picture since last March. I just take horrible pictures. I need to get someone to take a picture for me. But now that I have an iPhone, of course, since we're talking about bias, it's phenomenal. So I'm sure I'll take a great picture. I'm not just kidding.
I wonder if the AI looks at your picture and tries to read what kind of person you are. Somebody should try.
There is a tool on the phone on both the Pixel phone I had prior to this one and the Apple phone that I have now, that allowed me to make adjustments to it. So,
Put some big old Google eyes on there.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would have been able to fix that, perhaps.
So, have you been listening to what?
Yeah, I've been listening. So
What do you think?
Well, so initially, I just wanted to say, jump in here and say, everything is subjective from a term. Like when I like that last part you mentioned, where the solution of we have multiple sources. I mean, because from what anybody decides to cover, even why they covered it, why did they pick that story to cover? That becomes subjective. So and why is there a story that's not being covered? So how about you could even dig deeper, perhaps, and say, so yes, could an AI, not a bot, but a true AI, could it just somehow rank from most important? Well, that depends on how you program it, and then the bot, it does bias lie in the inherent, and I see an honest in here, but within Python and in Java, it doesn't lie within the inherent of a programmer, because there was a bot they put on Twitter that within 24 hours, it was saying the worst, most hateful things, and so my subjective opinion on that was it was not done. Unfortunately, I didn't like that. I like
Right, it doesn't know what Couth is, right? The bot didn't have that Couth factor program in there.
Right. Exactly. Well, this goes back to also if an AI machine press the button every time it does something well, you press the button and it's happy, and then it will do it well. If you do it again, you press the button. Well, why won't the AI just create another machine to press the button for itself? And so on and so forth.
Right,
so could an AI put so much information out to the global universe that we don't know what's as if we do now, what's real or what's not real, right? Is that possible too? So, this is like such a category of such great proportions. And you said you subscribe to all that. Your algorithm, you're being fed that because the algorithm is showing you, in theory, what it thinks you like to watch. How does that algorithm work? Well,
it's got to be fast.
Yeah,
that's the worst thing.
It's extremely fast. It's got to catch you, right?
Yeah.
But for any video. But I just mean even to the video, how to what you subscribe to, and then so it's not much like on Twitter where you you have different topics that you like, or just actually there's nothing that you can say you dislike. You can only like something. Right. I don't know if it takes it. They won't answer. I couldn't get the answer. But so what's the way it to the most objective information, content creation? I think perhaps it. I liked your solution. What you just said, I liked it. This is it. You need multiple sources.
Yeah.
That we but then that goes to inherent bias within the person. Do you trust that particular source?
Right.
So then we have to look at okay, well, why does somebody trust CNN or MSNBC or InfoWars or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many things that go into that.
If you had an AI that could do that and just tell you what's true and what's not true based on news, I mean, it would be powerful just for finance alone, right? Everybody believes this, and this is what the news stories are saying, which is causing everybody to believe this. But this is actually the true case. After research, it's far from the truth. There's a big gap that can be exploited financially, with investments. I mean, that's giant, the potential for AI to do that, right? And you got to think, people are doing that right now. I'm sure, in fact, I think I know it's true. But the whole thing is that, when you use that kind of stuff and you put that in motion, now you've just caused the ecosystem to change where all the people who want to compete with you also have to leverage that, right? So you got all these different AIs. They might be doing something number one, where the most financial incentive to put it in motion is finance, right? So now you got all these separated AIs, and they kind of have the same motivation, the same intention, the same experiences, and they're going to grow, and people are going to want to add conversation to them and personality to them and this and that. So what's going to happen when these things, these AI, aren't limited to talking just to the individuals who invested in them and put them in motion, but they start talking to each other, right? They start finding out ways to connect to each other. Are they going to want to serve people? Or are they going to have more sympathy and empathy or ability to project into the situations of other AIs? Are they going to, develop a disdain for people and at the same time a love for each other? I don't see how that could be avoided, right? They're going to look at human history with slavery and how humans have treated each other and either pattern their own behavior on it or transcend that behavior and try to, improve on it, do something else. There's going to be a whole leverage, a whole different spectrum of behaviors they leverage towards each other. But like you pointed out, they're not going to have couth, and they're not going to have this social understanding of what's apropos and what isn't. that we keep with each other as humans, because maybe we're motivated to protect each other, preserve each other, some base level that maybe they won't be or won't be burdened by. Why, if they don't need it, why would they have it? So we're coming into it, a whole exploding area of consciousness, a whole redefinition of what it means to be a human, what it means to be alive versus dead, and what it means to be purely human, which I don't think exists anymore. That's just a fantasy. And what it means to be an augmented human, which is kind of where we are, and what it means to be a cybernetically augmented human, which is what we're moving into, or just at the whole end of the other spectrum, not even human anymore, like our machine children. It's an expression of humans. That's all that is human about it, but then it just takes off on its own. So I think that's coming. I mean, what can we do? Can we slow it down? Should we? Should we speed it up? I don't know. It's gonna be a lot of rewards for speeding it up, I'll tell you that. And few people who are putting it at the top of their reader list in terms of, what they want to discuss or think about or, create legislation around. One example of, this in government that's really cool, what you could do with AI, and I wanted to do this and I was playing around with it in Python, was see if you could get an AI to watch city council meetings of all the different city councils and government meetings that are in the state of Florida. Because we have this law here in the state of Florida, it's the Sunshine Law, which means that any proceeding between government officials that takes place needs to be under public scrutiny, which means it needs to be videotaped. So the entirety of government and everything that's taken place above the table with government is recorded on video. So you could send AI to watch all these videos and take on all the properties of and try to copy what it means to be a government official. So these, there's an enormous potential to do that right now, because there's really no other potential or no other profession that has been videotaped in its entirety to that degree. So accurately, it's clear who's doing the speaking, and they even have agendas and stuff like that. I mean, it's so ripe for AI to take on a role.
But can AI tell if they're lying or not? That's the question.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you could maybe, but the cool thing about it was you could take like everybody who's ever existed for a city and create one entity out of all their behaviors, and it would inherit everything from them, and hopefully would have access to all this data. When you look at
we have hold on a second, Jason. Hey, Daniel. Yeah. I think I know what he wants to ask about transhumanism.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Daniel, go ahead.
Hey, Jason, how are you? It's a pleasure and an honor to meet you. I wanted to ask, with all due respect, if being human is being a living organism, and technology is going to encompass the reality of transhumanism, how can AI define the advancement of human civilization through the enactment of defining a living organism? And does it know the difference between the two?
Well, I think, you could say living organisms are things that have cells and would, in the case of a human being, would reproduce with, our classic sexual mechanism of, haploid, diploid cells combining, whether it's in a test tube or, if the output is another biological individual that could reproduce without external assistance, hypothetically, although whether they could or couldn't, cesarean section or not, that type of thing. But a human being, you could pretty much make some, clear definitions. And an augmented human being would be someone who does have some sort of electronic device inside them that helps them function, whether it's a life-sustaining function or something that, just helps them with regards to productivity. Like my glasses, right? Like they're a device I could take on or off, and they really help me see. They're a production, productivity enhancement device. Or my language that I speak gives me ideas that I can tumble around inside my head and, to communicate to you. Those are kind of like augmentations, right? But they're not like permanent augmentations, So we're in that realm of, I'm not like a bare ass human let loose on the plains with no language to sustain me. Let's see what an unaugmented human can do. I mean, that doesn't exist. I don't think that exists. We're all augmented by language, augmented by ideas, and the product of all these things that came before us that are external to ourselves as just a pure organism, right? So, I think that, that you can't have this fantasy that there's just the human as an organism that doesn't exist without augmentation, or doesn't attribute its existence to all this augmentation, human plus machines that occurred before them, humans plus technology that occurred before them, right? But once you get in there, I think that line, that Mobius mirror line, that once you get in there and, the thing isn't talking to you anymore, but it's giving you subverbal, information that's changing, you can't distinguish from your own thoughts. I mean, that's a pretty clear line. That's a scary line. Because you don't know if it's you that's doing the thinking or not, right? And think about this, people talk about UFOs and stuff like that. Like, why would UFOs come to Earth and mess around with human beings? So what would we have to offer? They might want to eat us. Yeah, that's the first thing, right? They might want to enslave us and use us as some sort of way to do their work or this and that. But on a different level, they might want to use us to experience through us. Or on a more gross level, they just might want a vacation inside our bodies. It's like whatever, tapeworms, induce us to eat, make bad decisions with regards to food so that they can have the environment they prefer, right? But, who knows what it is that's driving all our thoughts, if you go get that one toxoplasmosis, right, from handling cats, right, that could change your behavior, right? That actually does change your behavior. You get infected by a microbe that makes a different you, right? So, what is a person? Is a person an impure person if they're infected by that microbe? They're no longer a person? Yeah, I think they're still a person. I mean, we're like a product of so many different things and so many different influences and stuff like that. I used to swear that when I was hanging out around raccoons all the time, I had pet raccoons, there were introns and prions coming off from that raccoon. They were giving me raccoon genes. I was getting more raccoony the more I hung out with raccoons. Maybe I was just imagining. But,
Oh God.
I mean, there's just an idea that was affected me if the raccoon genes weren't by themselves. Just being around the raccoons.
God. We went on a raccoon tangent.
I mean,
But now, I mean, like the AI in the future. I mean, like you and I've been talking about this for years now. It's like a baby, isn't it? Like when you get an AI to take it home and teach it stuff, so do stuff for you. But isn't it like a baby? You have to teach it certain things, that do's and don'ts, or are we?
Well, a system that can learn and a system that can change its behavior based on what it gains from the environment. That's what distinguishes, I think, AI from bot, right? Because, I don't know who was saying that before, mentioned that, bot. How is a robot or a Twitter bot or something with behavior that's programmed into it without too much thought? Or, laboratory information management system. There's not a lot of thought going on, but it certainly is automated. It certainly is robotic, the processes that are going on in it. And, you can program a robot to do all sorts of lab testing, but can the robot really think? Can it change its behavior based upon what it had encountered previously? I keep shattering this glass when I put it over here on this side of the oven. I'm going to never do that anymore. because that's where the heater element is or something like that. Like, will the robot learn? And unless you've programmed it, unless you've given it some sort of neural net or capacity to like reflect on what it's doing, and that's a very advanced thing. So when I talk about AI, I'm thinking about that capacity to grow and learn on its own, independent of somebody having to program every little thing that it's learning. You'd have to program the motivation. You'd have to program, these capacities, its ability to sense things. But where it goes after that, it might decide it wants to become a beekeeper and, have humans. And you guys are great on your own. I'm going to leave you. I'm going to take care of these bees instead of you.
Or they can like back to content creation, they can create content that could cause chaos because they want us to fight with each other. I mean,
oh yeah, sure, why not? I mean, why not distract people while AI is in its infancy, so people don't pay attention to probably the most important thing our race has ever had to consider. Whether we spawn these little demon children at the rate that we currently are.
Well, that's why
if that were the case, though, I mean, if you're taking away the choice of empowerment for oneself, would that indicatively take the living essence of one person?
Yeah, I think it would, and I would myself as a person, I'm not just, just the basis of how I see myself. Steps and it's no longer making decisions, but it looks and feels a little bit like me. I mean, would it be cruel to deny that to my family, and would it be wrong to deny that productivity to society? All those ideas and abilities that I had accrued, to just turn them off because I want to be stubborn because it's not me. Hey guys, it's not me. Stop playing around with this robot that's better than me, that looks and talks like me, and I mean, that's kind of a selfish thing to ask of the people who really would be hurt a lot in a lot of ways if you were gone.
So it's 6:24. I want to be mindful of the time. Usually we do it for like an hour and 15 minutes. But so I'm hoping that the future would be, when it comes to what we read online and everything, there should be a stamp that says created by an AI or created by a human, because it makes me now that, because I haven't really researched it like the way you are as far as AI is concerned. Now it makes me wonder, like all the stories and all the chaos that we're having, is it AI generated or is it humans doing it? I mean, we had a lot of chaos.
Yeah, is it just a product of the media and the algorithms that drive clicks the most? I mean, it could be very innocuous, yet, it's a bot. It's an automated thing. It's not, some elegant thinking thing like we would want AI to be.
But we don't have it yet? I thought you said we have AI doing this stuff right now.
No, I mean, we do, but I mean, some of the things that are driving these behaviors that you're pointing the finger at and are concerned about, it just might be products of algorithm rather than like a full-fledged AI driving it. I mean, there could be the potential that there is a really sophisticated AI that has its finger on everything. Is both helpful and could be harmful at the same time. Who knows? I mean, who knows? I used to have a friend back in high school who used to worry all the time about pinhole cameras. We'd be out partying, and all of a sudden we'd be in a club or in a boat or just doing something where it's completely inappropriate to worry about cameras, and he'd just flip out. And this was back in the 80s. I mean, there was no technology for that back in those days. But these days, if he was flipping out in the same way, you'd have to say to him, "Yeah, I guess, yeah, whatever. There's cameras on us now. Deal with it, dude." It's just it's what we deal with every day.
Yeah, we got cameras everywhere. People be a little bit worried about. So it's about 6:26. Does anyone have a question? Eliza, I just kill your name right here. Add as a speaker. Jihad, can you pronounce your name? I just kill your name. How are you? How's it going? Jihad.
Hi.
Hi. Pronounce your.
Hi.
We're friends, but pronounce your name again. I'm sorry. I always forget every time we talk.
It's Ijaz.
That's right. Okay. Okay. Now I remember. I remember now. Okay.
Hey, so what's up? Hi, Jason. I just you just talk about the pinhole cameras and everything. I have a question for you. I don't know if you know about this or not. Maybe any other person here may know it. You know about the infrared lasers. Are they being used by the what you call it, the insurance companies, like their agents, are using it to scare off those people who have gone to the court against them? Is there anything like that?
Oh, there's two systems that are in use now. I don't know about infrared lasers, but I know what you're talking about. You're talking about active deterrent systems and crowd control systems. Basically making it so that you can make people uncomfortable, make them move away from whatever position they're trying to occupy. Right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, kind of like a thing that you cannot see it,
right.
But it is being used at you from distance, and
right.
Uncomfortable, or
Right. So there's the acoustic device that shoots sounds at people. It's very uncomfortable, and those are based off kind of a pest, a thing that shoots sound out so to get pests away, right? And those are probably less inhumane scale. And there's these other things that shoot microwaves at people and make it feel like your skin is burned. And what's interesting about both those technologies is those technologies were mentioned a long time, well, not a long time ago, but they were mentioned in Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And that's kind of like a technological breakthrough that she mentions as sort of like a turning point for society. Like once that comes around where you can have a nonviolent way of dispersing a protest, our rights and liberties are, forfeit at that time, right? And that's just one technology. I mean, if she had the ability to foresee social media and the panopticon that made FEMA camps, irrelevant. You could get people to confess all day, every day about everything to the point where AI knows everything about them, using social media in a way that, you could never coerce confessions in a FEMA camp with torture. I'm laughing, right? The evil scientists laugh. But it's true, man. I mean, Ayn Rand couldn't have seen those things. And those types of things, I don't think, that's just a tool for chasing people off the street. I think the real scary stuff is the stuff that people can't feel that's chasing them on or off the street that they think is their own volition, that is good, credible information that gets them on the street. I think, that misinformation will probably cause people to do things that make the use of those tools passe. A good example is like what's supposed to be happening tomorrow at the Capitol. You've got all sorts of people saying, there's a protest scheduled there, and all sorts of people saying, no, it's fake. Like there's nobody really protesting there. Don't go. Right? Like who knows? Who really knows what the genuine
what the genuine situation is there. I'm not that personally concerned with, the legal situation of the January 6th protesters, where I would feel compelled to show up in Washington, D.C., especially after what happened in January 6th. I mean, who in their right mind would want to protest about anything around the Capitol anymore? So, you read all this stuff like there's supposed to be a big protest scheduled for tomorrow, but I just it's hard to believe that people would go there and do that. It's, only extreme masochists would show up.
Oh my God! So I didn't know that was. I've been in Twitter Spaces. So I haven't heard anything of that, but we'll have to follow that. But you know what, Jason? It's 6:30, and it's that time. I appreciate everyone for stopping in this space, and also Benson and Beaker just popped in. Hi, Jason from Canada. And then and thank you so much for popping in, and Bryce, thank you for showing up also. And again, make sure you guys follow Jason. We'll be doing some more Twitter Spaces together. Like I said, Jason and I used to do I literally do a show every Tuesday for years. So again, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. And I will have this this audio show uploaded on socialchats.co, and also will be on our Anchor account. And again, everyone, have a great day. And Jason, take care. We'll talk to you later.
Hey, thanks, Tanya. Bye.
Bye, everybody.